Hello world, welcome back to Pro Saints Talk, and in this great episode, we break down Teddy Bridgewater, Taysom Hill, Marcus Davenport in heated, passionate debates that you'll surely enjoy. So dig in, get yourself comfortable, and we have a great episode for you all. And we also have a Fantasy Minute brought to you by French Quarter Realty included in this episode. Enjoy.
Look at uptown people like yeah. People up in Britain like yeah. Mid-city folks like yeah. People downtown man yeah.
Where you at, Hoodats? It's Pro Saints Talk back again, and we're downright excited to break down the national broadcast from this past Sunday. Saints Chargers action. It's become a bit of an annual tradition, this Saints Chargers joint practice session, this preseason matchup. But we're going to get down into it. Who's hot, who's not, all that good stuff. We'll run it all down. But first and foremost, my man Jorge, how we living, baby?
Living lavish as always, Ron. I want to give a shout out to all of our supporters out there, all of our Rons, because we put the podcast out on Wednesday, and my phone's been blowing up. George, where y'all at? Ron, where y'all at? Give us the podcast. It's like when you're late to feeding your son his dinner and he's yearning for it. Our podcast listeners have the same type of appetite that I didn't know it was so vivacious, and I appreciate that from all the fans out there. Here it is, a day late, an extra day to let the wine get a day better. Jay, how you doing, my main man?
I'm doing great, ready to break down the most anticipated episode of Pro Saints Talk in history.
Man, if that wasn't a teaser, I don't know. Man, speaking of hunger, we got another guy on the podcast that's hungry for more too. I mean, this guy might as well be at the front of the line for the Popeyes chicken sandwich. Stat Ron, how you doing, man?
Oh, we live, baby. We live. How we doing? Shout out to DJ Hardhead, recent follower of Pro Saints Talk. So shout out to Hardhead up here on the East Coast. But I'm doing well, man. I'm doing well. Haven't actually had the Popeye sandwich. In the Twitterverse, it's going nuts. But looking to wait in line at my local Popeyes up here in DC.
Blasphemy! Come on, man.
One thing, Campbell, I went to college in South Carolina. Once you leave, I'm getting like I-10. The Popeyes just aren't the same. They just don't do it right when you leave, especially Louisiana. All Popeyes are a bit bland north of Louisiana.
Yeah, surprisingly, DC's got a decent Popeyes. There's at least one of them, but yeah, no, totally agree.
I'm sorry, Ron. Ron, bring us back on track. We're not here to talk about Popeyes. We're here to talk about Saints.
Yeah, dude.
Lead the charge, baby.
This ain't Pro Popeyes Talk. It's Pro Saints Talk. So let's get into that Saints action that we had this past weekend. George, I know we want to break down who's looking good, who's not, because this is a critical point in preseason, right? You just wrapped up week 2. You're going into week 3. Starters usually play the most. This is really for the bubble guys to really make their mark, whether that bubble's going to burst or whether they're going to bounce off that bubble up on the depth chart. Really interesting this year, going from 90 straight down to 53. So you're going to get a lot of action from all these guys throughout preseason game 3 and 4. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's go with some first just obvious reactions. The national media is blowing up our boy Clickbait right now. He is truly turning into clickbait. We're getting stories of that he's being compared to Steve Young, and then everybody's backtracking off of that. Oh, well, I didn't mean he was going to be a Hall of Famer. But, hey, could have fooled me this past Sunday. The guy he's making plays. He's putting a spark out there. And I'll tell you who wasn't, Teddy Bridgewater. George, let's start with Bridgewater, obviously, since he started the game. We know he wasn't feeling well, but it certainly wasn't a Michael Jordan NBA Finals flu performance, was it?
No, I've had to record with the flu before, and I didn't put my best effort out there, so I'm going to cut a little bit of slack for Bridgewater. There's a lot of people overreacting on how poorly Bridgewater played. I don't want to make a mountain out of a molehill, which is our favorite term in the offseason, in the preseason. And I've been on him this preseason, but I'm not going to really – that performance, I'm not going to make too big of a deal out of it. It was bad. It was really bad. That he should have thrown 2 interceptions. Traquan Smith did his Eli Apple impersonation to avoid 2 interceptions. It was really bad. But I'm still iffy on him. I wasn't that hot on him after the Vikings game when everyone said, oh, he's looking really good. He's progressing well. Because he's had 3 performances so far. Panthers, Vikings, and now the Chargers. And oh my, do I have confidence in him life after Breeze? It's a slight no. It's a slight no. It's not a no, get rid of him. A lot of people are overreacting after that game. But right now, I'm not enthralled with the idea of handing him the keys and saying, hey, our offense is in good hands with Bridgewater down the road. Not just based off this Chargers game, but off his whole body of work. Sometimes he looks pretty good, and sometimes he doesn't. And you average that out, it's not a very good look. But I do have a lot to say about clickbait. But let's hear what Jay has to say about Bridgewater before we move on.
Yeah, I think one thing that comes to mind over these last preseason games and over the course of a training camp, I think when you're on the other side of it, when you're working in the industry, there's an expression that says, people say, don't be such a fan, which means don't have such knee-jerk reactions. Don't be so irrational. I feel like with a lot of these players, for instance, if you go back 2 episodes and you listen to the first podcast we did, we were ready to get Hakeem Butler fitted for his gold jacket in Canton. That's when I said, let's kind of wait a little bit, pump the brakes. I understand the excitement for all the fans out there. But let's just wait and see. And still with Bridgewater, George, you're talking about 3 games. And I understand that's our job to come on here and analyze, how these performances go. And frankly, I don't want to sound like a Bridgewater apologist. I am a fan. He didn't play well. He didn't have a good game. He looked uncomfortable from the start, throwing off his back foot. Holding the ball way too long. I think you saw that in the Minnesota game previously a little bit. He just wasn't in rhythm. I thought on that second drive, he looked a lot better, but you see why people have high hopes for this guy. He's got a strong arm. On that second drive, I think he hit Ted Ginn on one. Forget who he hit on the left sideline as soon as he came out of his route. George, you said he should have had 2 interceptions. I don't know about the Latavius Murray throw where he hit him inside the 5-yard line that bounced off his hands. If that can totally get blamed on Murray. So for me, it's just let's wait and see. I know it's our job to come on here and analyze how these guys did, how they played. He definitely played poorly, but am I ready to say that he's not capable of leading this team and being a starting quarterback? No.
Okay,
Jay,
let me jump in on that.
I want it. I want it this time, George, because you know what? It is our job to come on here and analyze it, and it is our luxury to be fans about it and overreact. So, first and foremost, Jay, yeah, he didn't look comfortable back there. I mean, yeah, credit to not feeling well, but even in the first game, I'm questioning his footwork. Week 1, I was a little bit of an apologist saying, well, nobody's Drew Brees climbing a pocket. But just looking at plays, him climbing the pocket on that sack, or not the sack, but the almost interception that he threw off balance, he's getting pulled down, throws it behind the guy, should have been picked off. I mean, that play, if you look at the pocket, he had an opportunity to climb up, and he could have either run for a first or found a target on the other side of the field. Even on the handoff, he kind of looked like he's stumbling out from under center. And even on that interception, Jay, that was actually to Washington.
Dwayne Washington.
Yeah, it was a quick turnaround for Washington, but maybe a little hot, maybe a little high. But something I noticed was it was a jump pass. I think both feet were off the ground when he threw that thing. And then you look at Taysom come in, and his footwork just looks a lot better. I mean, maybe he's just moving him more. I don't know. Maybe he's more athletic, got a better little center of gravity on him. But that's my biggest complaint with Bridgewater. And I think you saw that reveal itself in the time that he did shake out of the pocket. He is climbing up. You thought he might run for it. He launches one, and he sails it over Butler's head. Butler could have maybe gone for a touchdown on that pass. But
Yeah.
You're right. It wasn't all bad. the other ball that he threw to Butler, hit him square in the face mask. And yeah, our boy
That was
getting the gold
Taysom
jacket.
Hill. That was Taysom Hill that threw that, Ron. Taysom Hill hit him in the face.
Correct.
That was a 2-minute drive. Let me just jump in. So we have a huge decision to make here, and we have to have a bit of a knee-jerk reaction because at the end of the year, Breeze is gone. This is over. And we only have this preseason and last year's Panthers game to really know what we have in Bridgewater. What he does in Yulman Stadium and in training camp, c'est la vie, is what you do in the game. Like, well, Jordan Humphrey can shine in the game. But the fact that Bridgewater, his tape with us has been so meh is very telling. And I agree with what Jay's saying. We don't want to just – a guy has all of us have bad days. I get that. And we don't want to be overreacting here. I agree. But at the end of the day, we have a big decision to make. And every performance he has is what we're judging the big decision. It's the fork in the road. Are we going to go with him or not go with him? And right now, from what I've seen, past 2 games and the Panthers game, I say no thank you at this point. And I know you're going to say, oh, you're switching sides here. But you have to call it how you see it. And I don't have a lot of faith in Bridgewater moving the offense down the field dangerously. Do guys that are capable of doing that grow on trees? Not really, not so fast. But Bridgewater, to my opinion, is not one of them.
Strong takes by everybody. Stat Ron, where do you land on this one? We gotta side one way or the other.
Yeah, I'm kind of with. I tend to be more of a patient person. I feel like impatient with the Saints too, and I have a bunch of friends up here that are the erratic fans, and I agree. I think that the showings that Bridgewater has had so far do not make anyone feel really, really good about it. But I think this might have been mentioned a couple weeks ago on one of the episodes, is that I feel like we will always compare Bridgewater to the level of Breeze when he will step in or would maybe step into that starting role whenever that time would come. And I think that's just not fair. I think we expect a lot out of Bridgewater, and I think the expectation may need to come down a little bit when we do make that next step post Breeze. And so I kind of side with Jansen in being a little bit optimistic, but also, it's hard right now with the sample size that we've had.
So Campbell, play general manager, play Ireland, play Loomis, and end of the season, based off what you've seen so far, Breeze retires. Do you hand the keys over to Bridgewater? Do you make it an open competition? Or do you say thanks but no thanks? Based off what you've seen so far, not patiently waiting. This is a new question now.
I would open up. It's going to be an open competition, of course. Like I'm not ruling out Taysom Hill to be the starting quarterback when Breeze is gone. And I don't think anybody is.
Or a new face.
Or a new
face. I should have alluded. Right. Yeah.
Or a new face.
George, you're acting like we have 2 games to make the decision. The preseason is 4 games, and you're saying he's been meh. I'm saying he was good last game. He played poorly this game. I'll give it to you. If you put Dwayne Haskins in a Saints jersey instead of Bridgewater, I think his performance was a whole lot more noteworthy. But Ireland's not making his decision off of this game or the last 2 games.
I get that, but I'm basing it off what we've seen so far. And I'm just not enthralled with what we've seen. Is he the best backup we've had in the Breeze era? Sure. I would say, yeah. Is there going to be a drop-off after Breeze? Yes, of course. But we can't just say that makes Bridgewater the heir. And maybe week 3 he comes out, he's healthy, and he's gunning the ball, and we're all like, okay, this is who he really is. And there's a lot of talk on who he really is, but I haven't seen it yet. And maybe we've seen flashes of it, but I haven't seen it yet. Ron, do you have anything to add before we move on to clickbait?
No, I think Stat Ron hit on a good point, and I think going forward, and I think we've done this to an extent, but I think the comparison is probably more fair to compare him to Taysom Hill and not Drew Brees. So, we'll try to do that going forward. But I think this debate was really a reflection of where the Who Dat Nation is right now, man. You got Ron's clamoring to say Taysom Hill needs to be number 2 on the depth chart if, God forbid, something happened to Breeze this year. So, all right, that was a very contentious topic. I love the heat surrounding it, and I'm hoping this one brings equally as much, if not more. So we talked about Bridgewater enough, but let's break down this Taysom Hill performance a little bit. Because, I mean, you got to see a little bit of everything, right? You got to see the playground ball when the O-line breaks down. You got to actually see him stand in the pocket and rip some throws like Jay was talking about last week. So you really got a whole package. The guy, StatRon was talking about being patient. The Saints are being patient with Taysom Hill, and they're getting rewarded right now. The guy is really showing substantial improvement from last season to this. George, overall thoughts? I mean, I'm loving what we're seeing right now.
Okay, might be a crazy take here, but when you look at Taysom Hill, it's always a wide variety of what you get, and this is the best. Last week was the best of the best clickbait action you'll see. That was great run. He looked like Michael Vick, Jerome Bettis power. He was making the throws. He looked fantastic. On that Sunday 3 o'clock national broadcast, not only Saints fans saw that, but the whole nation saw that. And that was the best clickbait's ever looked. He looked fantastic. It was so much fun to watch, and the whole country saw that. And that got me thinking, is maybe, let's say Russell Wilson goes down, or Nick Foles doesn't make it with the Jaguars. Is Taysom Hill stock at an all-time high right now? And maybe you could use this as a time to trade him and get a piece that we need more so than a multi-use knife on our offense. That just got me thinking, because if a team offered a really good DN, a really good defensive tackle for clickbait, I'd be very intrigued by that if they were quarterback needy, because we talk about clickbait being the future. I don't mean to sound so pessimistic, but I don't think he could. In BYU, when he was that quarterback, he always got hurt, and he will always run. He will always get hit. He's just a very physical guy. So to give him the keys to the offense, I don't think he'll last 17 weeks. And there's a bit of a lens, like remember Jeremy Lin with the Knicks, how he had that incredible stretch? Maybe we're in the middle of the Linsanity of clickbait. And maybe we should trade him at an all-time high, because his value is so high right now. And he really doesn't have that much more to give as a quarterback. And I love him, but we might be able to parlay this into more. Jay, what do you think about that theory?
I think it's an awful theory. I think we've been talking about the quarterback position, and it's George, one of your favorite words. It's absolutely paramount to have a guy there. And I'm on the clickbait bandwagon after watching that preseason game. I got knee-jerk positivity right here. But, I mean, this guy's whole body of work, George, Ron, has been impressive, and you feel like the more opportunity you give him, the more he takes advantage of it, George, in contrast to kind of how you were talking about Bridgewater. You watch him, and he hasn't been producing to you, and you're just listening to what your eyes tell you. As a scout, you're supposed to listen to what your eyes tell you. And with Hill, he's such a talented runner. George, to your point, he's not going to go out of bounds. There was one play where a linebacker was planning to meet him on the sideline and just kind of escort him out of bounds, and he cut up field a la Hokie Gajo on the famous play way back in the day. But what was more impressive was, Ron, what you were alluding to. It was him sitting back in the pocket and ripping some out routes, ripping some throws over the middle. And what that tells me is this guy, he's got the potential to work with and be the heir apparent. And how special could he be if he's not just doing the read option every play, but he's also a legitimate threat to throw the ball and go through progressions. I think on one of the touchdowns, I forget who said it, one of the receivers said, "Man, I was the fifth option on that route. Nobody ever throws to me in practice, but I thought there might be a chance of the ball coming to me." What that tells me is the Saints are comfortable with him under center. They're not splitting the field up for him to make reads. The whole field is open to him to make reads. So he's taken what Sean Payton's given him, and he's really evolved in the system. So there's no reason why this guy can't be the starting quarterback at some point, and maybe down the line to have a competition with Bridgewater. But George, to answer your question, I don't think it's worth it to potentially get a piece to win a championship this year to trade away a guy like Taysom Hill. I think it's robbing Peter to pay Paul. Not a sound transaction right there.
Yeah, I think it'd be asking a lot of a team to be that bold. Yeah, he got some regular season action last year, but primarily in Wildcats. So, I mean, you'd be asking a team to really extrapolate on a preseason performance to give up a prize defensive end. But, Jay, just to
Well, that
echo
happens
on
all the time with Jimmy Garoppolo. That's happened before.
True. That's a good point. That's a good case study. Hey, I'll give you that one. But
Garoppolo was 5 years ago. Brady's still playing. To your point, George, you're talking about Breeze. You almost say it as a fact that he's retiring after this season. Well, you better have a plan of what's going to happen next.
Well, my point was this. You said there's no concerns about Taysom Hill. There are concerns. It's called his injury concerns, which he faced in BYU while he was a quarterback there. And this is not something that's going to be consistently going to work for us. It might, and I'd love to eat crow. It would be so fun. The Dome would love it, a Taysom Hill offense with him and Kamara. It would be a lot of fun. But is it consistent? I don't know. Just last week we were saying, man, he misses the easy throws. He
Right.
throws it like he's shooting beer pong. And the next week we're talking like he's the air. He's not that consistent. And I think a lot of people saw what he did last Sunday, and they're making a big deal out of it. And if you could get, I don't want to say Alex Okafor because we just left him, but a guy like that, like a very solid contributor to our defense for Taysom Hill, who is going to have these up and down great moments. And it's a lot of fun. It makes being a Saints fan unique and special and extremely interesting how we're going to use him. I get that. But we might be able to sell high because the stock is sky high after last week's performance.
Right. And to counterpoint real quick, Rob, I'm sorry to cut you off right there, but if I said there's no concerns, then I misspoke, because absolutely there's concerns, but you saw the potential in this preseason game. You saw the potential in last preseason game. Did he miss some easy throws? Yes, but those are part of the growing pains. And then as far as being a running quarterback, ideally those guys evolve and they learn to go out of bounds if they're the starting quarterback. Russell Wilson took a lot more hits in college than he did in the NFL. He's learned to go out of bounds. He's learned to slide. And now he's been in the NFL Taysom Hill's been in the NFL for 4 years, knock on wood. He hasn't gotten hurt yet. So you don't trade a guy predicated on him potentially getting hurt because he got hurt in college.
Yeah, just a closing note on this. I think Peyton's got too much pride to give up on this project just yet. And I think, yes, we are extrapolating a lot on 1 week's performance, but I think that's because this past Sunday was maybe the first time for a lot of Rons to kind of open their eyes and look forward to the future and imagine a Saints offense that Peyton is 100% all in on, devoted to embracing this new style of play from Taysom Hill. And yes, it will be more volatile. It will be more up and down. It might be more like the Aaron Brooks days than it is the Drew Brees days. And we may never have a quarterback as durable as Drew Brees again. I mean, these guys don't just come around every other year, So you got to factor all that in. But I think just this past Sunday was just that foreshadowing of the potential for something new and exciting. And
wait, Ron, I would say Teddy. Sorry, go ahead.
Well, just one more closing note, Jay, from that same triplet article where, Austin Carr was saying, man, 99.9% of the time that ball's never coming to me, but he found me. Did we also know this? His college nickname was Thorterback. Like, for all you Marvel fans out there, Thor Turback. Come on now. I love that one. So what you got, George?
Okay, so Teddy Bridgewater would be the return of the Aaron Brooks today, where it's somewhat mobile and a pretty average to okay quarterback, pretty average to above average quarterback play. That would be the Teddy Bridgewater, Aaron Brooks. If we went clickbait offense, it'd be a whole new frontier. It would be Michael Vick plus something the NFL's never seen before. You can't compare that to Aaron Brooks. It'd be a very new and fun frontier. I don't want to sell that short. Going all in on clickbait would be fantastic entertainment, and I fully agree with that. And it might be productive, but over the course of a season, I don't see it working out advantageously. But let's move on. I think we've all made our points there.
I can 100% compare him to Aaron Brooks. You're talking about Michael Vick. Aaron Brooks, his cousin, dude. We're talking about Air Run Brooks, man. Yeah, the guy
No,
was super mobile.
not like clickbait. He couldn't stay 5 yards behind clickbait in a race.
All right. We'll stat Ron, check 40 times for me. That's your assignment. All right. So that was a super contentious topic. I love the heat and passion that everybody's bringing to the quarterbacks right now. So let's
Embrace debate.
Exactly, dude. Let's shift it over to the other side of the ball where I think we're going to have just as much debate. We haven't had a Marcus Davenport in too long on this podcast, and he's overdue to get broken down. Let me just be the first one to kind of pick out a few plays because I had him under the microscope. I rewatched the condensed replay, and Jay, we talked about the rawness of this guy. You seem to like his efforts, flashes of strength, and I 100% see that, but only in flashes. I'm also watching plays where he's getting chipped a lot, and that can be frustrating. I mean, I don't know anybody that can be effective getting chipped every damn play, and he just about is. But when he's getting crack blocked by a wide receiver, and I mean he's totally just blown up by it, but not just the initial hit. Then he got washed down by the wide receiver Patton on this one crack block. So that to me, I'm like, his feet aren't underneath him because clearly he should be able to withstand that hit. I got other examples where, hey, on that pick that Klein had on the tip ball by Onyemata, Davenport gets a full head of steam and pancakes his tackle in front of him. So that one, you're like, damn, if he really gets a full head of steam behind him, this guy's packing a punch. But in other cases, he looks a little too slow. Maybe it looked like he was getting a little gassed there in the second quarter. I'm not going to lie. So, yeah, just a few instances that I'm noticing where smaller guys than him are able to get leverage on him, and he doesn't necessarily have his feet under him. But when he does, he's making good plays. And, yeah, there was unfortunately one of his best moves. He falls flat on his face after slipping on the turf. So, George, what am I supposed to think about Davenport right now? I mean,
let Jay. You start off with let Jay. You ask the question to Jay. Let Jay answer this one first. I got a great point to make. I got a lot of excitement on this one.
Jay, I know you're going to talk me off the ledge a little bit. But just tell me, where do we stand with Davenport week 2 of year 2?
Stat Ron, do me a favor, a little project for you. I want you to look up Jason Taylor, Julius Peppers, even go as far back as Bruce Smith. I want to see their production. I know we have a question about Cam Jordan's production. I want to see their production in their second season and just see kind of the climb from year 1, year 2 to year 3. So yeah, like George, I got a lot of opinions on this guy. I think, man, the guy is so under the microscope, and we've talked about ad nauseum how, the Saints traded 2 picks for him, and how in order for the Saints to be successful, he has to have X number of sacks. But for me, it goes back to the Bridgewater discussion where, can anybody tell me how Cam Jordan did this game, or anybody tell me how everybody is watching him, all eyes on him? And Ron, I saw a lot of the same things you did. You see him going against the tackle, and it's like he only has vision for the guy in front of him and has no vision for the running back that's coming up just to whack his ass. And you want him to have a little bit more of a football IQ, and it's very disconcerting when you see guys come out of nowhere and hit him, because that tells me that his awareness isn't where it needs to be. Zach Strief had an interesting report before the game that he said on watching the warm-ups, the receivers slipped 5 straight times on the StubHub Field turf, very loose field. I'm not going to say that as an excuse, but I am going to point it out. There were a couple times, Rob, you alluded to the flashes where the left tackle maybe expected Davenport to rush right up the middle, which he does pretty commonly. And Davenport kind of took a jab step towards the chest and then swam outside to the outside and got by the left tackle. And on that one particular play, Rob slipped. On another play, he had a half a sack due to effort. On another play, Dwayne Haskins threw a touchdown in the end zone. He was about a half a second late. So I think everybody looks at the sacks. That's the sexy number for the defensive end. What is he doing? On that 3rd and 1 and 4th and 1 on the first drive for the Chargers, he pushed the lineman back, got good penetration in order for Demario Davis to get in the backfield and make the play. I don't want to sound like a Demario Davis apologist, or I'm sorry, Marcus Davenport apologist. There was another play where he totally lost contain. The running back got outside. But what I'm getting at is the guy needs reps. He's got freakish ability. Right now, his technique is not where it needs to be. He is not, I don't think he's a liability. He's got to improve a bunch. He's not living up to his first round drafting selection at top 15 pick, 2 first-round picks. Certainly he's not. Does he still have potential to be a great player in this league? Yes. You look at how long the guy is. Trey Hendrickson had an excellent game, screaming off the edge. It didn't look like the turf was loose for Trey Hendrickson on the other side. In year 2, he kind of looked just meh, but we don't talk about Trey Hendrickson looking just meh in year 2 because he's not under the microscope because he wasn't drafted in the first round like Davenport. What I see is a guy that's thinking too much. He's playing. He doesn't look like he's screaming off the edge. He's not firing off the ball. He's big, long. He's not looking like he's terribly explosive and fast coming off the edge, which tells me that he's thinking too much still. He needs to get to the point where he's just playing football, and I don't think that's too far-fetched to say by game 8 he's significantly ahead of where he is right now. So I know George called 870 and said time to sound the alarms on this guy. While, yes, there's reason for concern, hold on now, guys. Let's temper it a little bit.
Well, Jay, you hit it. We're looking for improvement, right? And I feel like we saw the same kind of flashes last preseason. I can remember in San Diego last year, we're watching it at the 2018 Pro Uptown Talk draft. And yeah, we're seeing this guy just rip a running back down, but with an arm tackle. And you're just seeing some of this strength. And that was, I think, on a reverse play. So he kept the contain on it. So you got to see some of that athleticism. But it just kind of looks like we haven't really made that leap yet in year 2. And granted, 2 weeks into preseason, we'll see what happens this week. But that's what's the most concerning for me. George, on the opposite, and I know you're going to hit on Davenport too, but we are seeing that improvement with Hendrickson, and I know you're going to hit on that. So go at it.
Okay. I have so much to say. And Jay, you're right. A lot of things you're right. One thing I want to say is I don't want to understate the 2 first-round picks. That's Marcus Lattimore and Ryan Ramczyk. We can't forget how important, how valuable 2 first-round picks. Yeah, he's under the microscope because he has that price tag on him. He has that value on him. So it's not crazy for us to be watching him like this. And my point about the alarms is this. You know, when a tornado comes in the area, the fire department, they sound the alarms to notify the people to be cautious, be aware. I want everyone to be aware right now. We have a very potential bust on our hands because he's getting outperformed by Trey Hendrickson, by Wes Horton. When I was watching the DNs intently this game because I know how important. This is not the time to wait for Davenport to develop. This is not the season for that. We traded 2 first-round picks for him to dominate now. This is the Super Bowl run. He is a liability. The Houston Texans are going to run at him. The Dallas Cowboys are going to run at him. The Rams are going to run at him. The Seahawks are going to run at him. He doesn't show you enough to make you have any confidence in him. It's terrifying. This guy is okay making a mountain of a molehill. Yes, I'm doing that because this is a mountain. We gave 2 first-round picks for this guy. That is so valuable, and this guy isn't showing you much of anything. Even in last preseason, we saw more than this. And Trey Hendrickson is outperforming him by a mile this preseason. Everything that we needed to hear for Davenport to take that leap, we haven't heard any of it. Everything we needed, we haven't read it, we haven't seen it. It's just not there. We've been counting on him. Every week we have this podcast and we say we're counting on him to make that leap, and now we're expecting it. And now 2 weeks into preseason, all training camp long, you don't hear anyone saying anything good about him. And it's kind of scary. They just say he's got flashes of this, flashes of that. It's like you're counting on the lightning strikes to give you the light to give you light. We need constant. We need reliability. And you compare him to Cam Jordan. Cam Jordan's rookie year, we all constantly remarked on how good he looked. Davenport just has these flashes. And I don't want to attack Davenport in this way where I'm cheering against him. No, I'll buy everyone that listens to this podcast a Dixie and the beer. I'll eat a crow. It doesn't matter. I'm still rooting for him, but I'm watching him
You'll
so
eat an
intently.
actual crow if what?
If he has 10 sacks,
Yes, eat a crow.
We'll eat a crow. But guys, there is a reason why there's so much build up on him, because we invested so much in him and there's so much expectations on him, and that's what's so alarming. In the fact that there's no evidence from the beats, from the training camp, from the preseason to show that he's developing, and it's very, very alarming.
Okay,
Yeah.
so I got some
good.
some number crunch
stat run.
comparison.
Yeah, I was just about to throw it to you. So we've had a fan question saying, "Hey, we're too hard on Davenport. Go look at Cam Jordan's numbers." I'm pretty sure this guy must be a late listener, because didn't we break this down all last year? Stat Ron, hit us with the facts, because what we'll find is, George, you were right. We did say that about Cam Jordan, but he didn't get home that often. Ain't that right, Stat Ron?
That is correct, Ron. So in Cam Jordan's rookie year, he played 16 regular season games and 2 playoff games. In those 18 games, Cam Jordan recorded 38 combined tackles, 4 pass deflections, and 1 sack. 1 sack. Davenport in his rookie year played 13 regular season games and 2 playoff games, so a total of 15, if you can do the math. 2 pass deflections, 26 combined tackles, but 4.5 sacks and 13 quarterback hits for Davenport's rookie year. But one note to make here, Cam Jordan, from year 1 to year 2, increased his sack number from 1 to 8 in year 2. I also went ahead and did some comparison per Jay's request for Jason Taylor, Julius Peppers, and Bruce Smith. Rookie year for Jason Taylor, 5 sacks. Year 2, 9. Julius Peppers, 12 sacks in 12 games as a rookie, and then dropped down to 7 sacks. 7 sacks in his year 2. And then Bruce Smith, rookie year, 16 games, 6.5 sacks, and jumped that number up to 15 sacks in year 2. So, I mean, do we expect that Davenport's going to have at least 8 sacks?
Well, all right. Jay, you just had us jump from comparing him to Cam Jordan to comparing him to 3 of the best ever. So,
yeah, my point is that we're looking for him to make this big old splash, and a lot of it I think is hopeful thinking for Saints fans, because this, as we've alluded to, that the window is closing here. And in order to win a championship, we need a great pass rush, not only from Cam Jordan, but from the guy that we traded 2 first-round draft picks for. So I wanted to see, I didn't know what the answer was. Let's compare it to 3 NFL Hall of Fame defensive ends, and let's see what their production is over 2 years. And you see a guy like, will we be disappointed if Davenport goes from 4.5 to 7 sacks? Julius Peppers had 7 sacks in the second season, and the guy is a first ballot Hall of Famer. So
I think
sometimes
you're right
it takes
on
time.
I think you're right on it. I think we'd be happy with probably 7.5, 8 sacks. Maybe George wants a little bit more than that, but I think that we'd be willing to accept that. So, look, I'm going to give him a fair shake when he lines up opposite Cam Jordan, because I'm telling you, go watch how many times the guy's getting chipped. Jay, I know you got to have your head on a swivel and you got to be, feeling this stuff at your peripherals, but I mean, come on. It's tough when you're getting chipped every time. You're just not going to get home. So I'm anxious to see what he does in a one-on-one matchup, because I think that's what was somewhat freeing up guys like Horton and Hendrickson this past weekend. I mean, those guys were causing havoc, right, George? I mean, that was pretty exciting to see the kind of burst and speed and just power push that Hendrickson was getting. I was going in, putting him under the microscope because, we tend to kind of just put Davenport on the back burner as this project, this work in progress. But if Hendrickson could come along, man, then okay, then we got something. We got a little bit of depth. And now we even saw something out of Horton. So, George, hit me with some of your takes. I know you're loving T-Rex after Sunday.
No, T-Rex played great. Horton, he showed a lot. You know, Caden Ellis is a guy that we should really jump into because Junkyard Dog, Craig Robertson, it's not confirmed yet, but he's facing IR according to Deuce on WWL. So Ellis looked really good. He was fun to watch. And you know how we never really state the obvious? We never just say how good Drew Brees is or how good Cam Jordan is. We need to give Demario Davis some love. He is so good and fun to watch and just a headhunter on our defense. A linebacker, even a step above Vilma, which is just a real ode to how great he is. And it was fun to watch him in that preseason. Those two guys really look good. And Anzalone's facing an injury. So that leaves you with the Junkyard Dog out, potentially Anzalone out, only A.J. Klein, Demario Davis, and then that puts Ellis in. So Caden Ellis, a 7th-round jackknife linebacker, special teams ace, he might be contributing this rookie year. And that's kind of exciting because I've liked what I've seen out of him. He looked very interesting. He looked very good, very productive. So hopefully he can learn quickly. You know, he's a coach's son. He's going to be thrown in the fire, sink or swim, thrown in the water, sink or swim. Forgive me. But defensively, those are my main thoughts. Von Bell had that great breakup. He's in a contract year, so you can expect big things from him. Saquon Hampton, I hope he heals up because I'd like to see him over Banjo. And cornerback-wise, Ken Crowley, I think he almost sealed his fate that he's going to be gone. But really, I think going through the rest of the preseason, a lot of eyes on Caden Ellis. That's the guy I really liked.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a guy that, Jay, I know you're high on. We've talked about him a good bit on this podcast. But, George, you've actually got some intel there that nobody's really talking about this Anzalone injury and how bad it might be. And then if we're talking Craig Robertson on the IR, you're really starting to challenge that linebacker depth. And I think even Beagle got dinged up a little bit in this past game. Maybe not serious, but still things that you got to consider. And so, yes, it is a good thing that we're seeing some encouraging signs out of Ellis. The thing I get concerned with is, yeah, this guy's a super athlete, but what are his instincts? What's his decision-making out there? Because I just feel like inexperienced linebacker play, while you love the aggression, you can hit the wrong gap and then give up the big play. So those are some of my concerns. Jay, what else do we see on the depth of the linebackers? Colton Jumper makes a play at the end of the game, which we actually have a fan question about. But is Caden Ellis good enough to, really step in and play alongside Klein and Demario Davis this season?
Yeah, I think we saw it early in the game. I think, we can talk about what we want to, but it's clear that Dennis Allen and the coaching staff trust Ellis. He was in there in the early rotation. He was making plays in the box. Ron, I think I understand your worry. I think there's a lot more that goes into the linebacker play, especially those inside guys that, you got to take the right steps as a linebacker, plug the right gaps, because you take one false step, then that guy's taking 65 yards to the house. So you'll see that a lot in individual work in the beginning of practice where those guys for 10 minutes, they're just taking small steps to make sure they're where they need to be. And I think with Ellis, I think he's got the instincts. I don't know how fast and explosive he is, but he seems to be where he needs to be. And he's been a guy that we've been all over from the start, and he's kind of lived up to that potential. So that's been good to see. Jumpers look good. Kind of intrigued by the long defensive end from USC. You guys might have more to say about him. I think he was an outside linebacker in college and then playing defensive end now. Josh Martin, the guy that we talked about, just finds a way to hang around, had a couple nice quarterback hits. The pride of Columbia University was out in front of Jumper on that interception with that last block. He's a guy that could potentially make it on special teams, and then he's going to be where you need him to be on defense, and he's just going to do his job. So it's never a problem, Ron, having depth all over the field.
No, and it's a rarity that the Saints are talking about having linebacker depth. So that in and of itself is amazing. George, you touched on the secondary just a little bit. I love that you brought up that great bat down that Von Bell had. When was the last time we saw that from a safety in a Saints uniform? I mean, deep ball on the sideline, between the numbers and the sideline, and Bell gets over there and then makes the play on the ball. Totally clean, doesn't even touch the receiver. That was a thing of beauty. You don't see that in the Saints secondary every year, and it really made me. It just warmed my heart. It just did.
And Ron, Von Bell is entering his contract year, and he's played significant snaps for the Saints, and he's yet to have his first interception. So that'll be a great game we could play. When will he have his first interception? Because he's well overdue for his first interception, and it's imminent. But another name, Ron, I want to bring up is Onyemata, because without Rankins, it's all on Onyemata. So he's out week 1. C'est la vie. We can move on. He looked really good. He was the one that batted that interception to A.J. Klein. He's going to have to be the force he was last year. Maybe even step it up a notch higher, because he wasn't that far off from Rankins. And Rankins had a phenomenal season last year. Onyemata wasn't that far behind him as far as play and production. Remember that Cowboys game? He was all over the place. So Onyemata, another great name to really watch as we progress into the regular season, because he has a lot on his shoulders as well. And we have all the faith in the world in him. Ron, one other, if we move to offense, can we dive into the wide receivers that we heard so much about? Because all offseason we heard about how good Cobbs and Butler and Grayson were. And it's the only guys who've really produced have been Lil Jordan Humphrey and Cyril Grayson. So there's been a lot of hype on these other guys, but it hasn't translated into the games thus far, and that can easily change week 3 and week 4 in the preseason. So more bark than bite on that one. What do you think?
Well, give the other guys a little bit more credit. I mean, obviously you saw Austin Carr make a play on the touchdown pass where Taysom finds him. Simi Cobbs, he just hadn't had his number called a lot, but every time he has, he's made the play. He had a really nice comeback route that just showed some real good feet, and then he had one that he bobbled a little bit, but he held on, and I think that actually might have been the same play, but he just hadn't had his number called that much. Traven Durrell.
It was a great route by him. You're right.
Yeah, Traven Durrell made a couple catches, got right upfield, but Butler, man, I was so excited to see it. And yeah, it's not his fault that Bridgewater airmailed that one, but you're right, George. Man, that one that Hill put right in his right in his face, I just laughed out loud watching the game. After all the hype, all the comparisons, and this dude has the perfect opportunity to land a 15-yard out route. I just laughed. I just laughed out loud. But one guy we're not talking about on this show, and this is directly tied to a fan question. So fans out there, we listen and we read every bit of feedback that we get from y'all. Obviously, some of the stuff, from the Under the Overpass crew where y'all just trolling us, we throw it right out. But we read everything, all right? And so we got fans.
Let me take this one, Ron.
We got fans clamoring about Traquan Smith, saying we're not showing this guy enough love for the things that he's doing when he doesn't have the ball. That's a big thing for Sean Payton, right? That's probably a lot of the reason why Austin Carr continues to make this team. The guy's always run blocking. And that's what we're hearing from our boy Matt. Matt's saying, y'all aren't giving Traquan Smith enough love for the blue-collar work he's putting in. Jay, what are your thoughts on that? And, kind of along the same question of expectations. What should we be expecting from Traquan?
I thought you were going, my boy Deontay Harris is about to go all in on a little Deontay Harris rant. But I'll take Traquan Smith. Hey, Matt, Keyshawn Johnson, Terrell Owens, I guess Hines Ward was known for his blocking a little bit. Randy Moss, they didn't get to the Hall of Fame because they were great blockers. Is it nice to have as an NFL receiver to be able to block? Do you have to do it? Yes. But the Saints need Traquan Smith to be a good, very good number 2 wide receiver. while it's necessary to be a good blocker, we need to see him consistently improve as a wide receiver. I think you can expect Traquan to make a jump this year. I'm not expecting a substantial jump from what I've seen this preseason. I think he's looked good. He hasn't looked bad or given me any reason for concern. But I think you'll see him overtake Ginn to be that number 2 wide receiver this year.
This is one of those position groups that every week you're seeing depth charts that just get flipped upside down, from numbers 3 down to 6, 7. It's really just so fluid, and this is actually probably the most exciting part about it going straight from 90 guys to 53. You tell me, George. I look at Lil Jordan Humphrey, and I think this guy looks like the wide receiver. I know you said Simi Cobbs in person just looks the part. I think Humphreys looks the part.
I agree. You put him in the game and he produces. You read the articles all season long about these other names, namely Emmanuel Butler. But hey, come game time, Lil Jordan Humphrey's the man. And that was his 4.11 when he came out of college. Hey, his measurables aren't that great, but by golly, when you put him in, he produces. So at this point, a month ago, we would have scoffed at this, but I would say he's your 5. Maybe Austin Carr, but it's between Carr and Lil Jordan. And that it's like you said, it fluctuates daily. But that's a very interesting depth chart to constantly monitor because it's going up and down each and every day. And another one that's interesting is tight end. Alize Mack came back to practice today. So today is Wednesday, and Andrew's going to put this out there on Thursday. So Alize Mack came back on Wednesday to fight with A.J. Derby and Dan Arnold for the tight end 3. Not Dan Campbell, Mr. Statron, not Dan Campbell. I know that. Dan Arnold. So if he can find a way to make the offense more exciting and more dimensional, he could make the team as your tight end 3, even though there's a lot of competition there.
Garrett Griffin too, you forgot about.
Thank you, bro.
Yeah, no, it's all great battles. I guess my biggest concern is when we start talking about the depth at tight end and wide receiver is comparing it to ourselves, and not really seeing it. Is it good enough to get open? Is it good enough to beat opposing defenses? I think that's our biggest concern, right? Down the stretch
like last year.
We were looking for weapons. Nobody could get separation. So it's great that we're all excited about what we've got going on, in camp. And I think to give the wide receivers credit, they are showing us something this preseason. But that's my biggest caution in terms of the weapons. George, switching to other people that had some catches. Our boy Devine Azigbo, I first wrote him off as soon as he fumbled inside the 10 like that. I said, boom, he's gone. He's cut. But he actually bounced back, and he had a pretty good game. He had a couple good pass blocks. He had a couple good runs. And he continues to flash those hands that we talked about. Guy must have caught 3, 4, 5 passes out the backfield, including that touchdown from Taysom. And he looks comfortable doing it. I mean, I really like the way he looks. But then at the same time, you got Washington, who's just all reliable. I mean, obviously had the ball off his hands, which I don't really put that on him. Like I said, it was high, it was hot. He had just turned around, so I don't put that all on him. But I think Washington still got the lead. Statron, what's your gut telling you right now? Yeah, George. Yeah, take a breather here. I want to hear from the Statron first. What his gut is telling him. Dwayne Washington or Devine Azigbo?
At this point right now, I would say Dwayne Washington. I think we talked about earlier too. I think, if you're looking at the next 2 preseason games, who are the people that really have to stand out to make this team? Devine Azigbo is that one. I mean, he is fighting for his life. That fumble did not help. While, yes, he redeemed himself, I think that does hold a lot of weight in Sean Payton's mind when evaluating talent. Turnovers in the red zone, like that is not acceptable. No matter if it's, fourth quarter in a preseason game or in practice, whatever. So, I think the fumble does hold a lot of weight. At this point, I would say Dwayne Washington, but again, I think when looking at the next 2 preseason games, Zigbo has got a Sharpie circled around his name as one of the guys to really need a good 2 performances in those games to make this team.
All right, Jorge, I know you want it, so get your 2 cents in.
Dwayne Washington looked like Susan Haydel playing volleyball in that catch. That was terrible hands, but he'll still get the nod. He'll still get the nod as your running back 3 because he's such a great special teamer, and he's a great punt returns. He's great in coverage, so he's going to make the team. And the difference that Ozigbo might have is very marginal and not worth the roster spot. So he'll probably get practice squad unless, like StatRon said, he has a tremendous week 3 and week 4 in preseason. But for me, it's Washington's job to lose. And then that wide receiver 5 is very important because they're not going to keep 6, because the 6th guy they're going to keep is Jay's boy Harris as your punt returner. And I know Jay's really eager to give us a deep dive on him.
Yeah, so after the draft, we talked about the undrafted free agents. We said keep an eye out on Deontay Harris out of Assumption, Lil Jordan Humphreys. Here we are, week 2, talking about the same 2 guys. Tune in here to Pro Saints Talk, talking about Caden Ellis right after the draft. Look at him now. All the best insight is right here on Pro Saints Talk. Deontay Harris, the way he looked against the Chargers, I'm going to be shocked if he is not in the Pro Bowl. I'm saying if he makes this team, which he absolutely should, he is going to make the Pro Bowl this year. Book it. He looked so comfortable back there, catching those balls at ease. It just looked like a returner in slow motion. Everything was moving fast for everybody. Great vision, great agility, great change of direction, great speed. This guy looks like number 82 for the Chiefs 7 years ago back there. He's making the Pro Bowl. Book it. And then one more hot take. Ozigbo, I really like his ceiling. I really like, Ron, I'm with you. I saw the fumble in the red zone. He was rocked in the backfield. Stat Ron, great point. Never fumble in the red zone, regardless of what happens to you. But this guy gets in space often. Good vision. Good change of direction. I think he's got a higher ceiling than Washington. Wouldn't surprise me if Ozigbo was the 3rd running back. And Saints fans, I'd be really happy if Ozigbo made the team, because I think he's a contributor. And George, going back to the point of calling it here first on this show, that's the guy we highlighted coming out of the draft at running back.
Yeah, and so it would surprise me, though, because what we keep going back to, special teams, and Dwayne Washington has a stranglehold on just about all the special teams positions. So, and I think the other thing, Jay, first off, that got me really pumped up. How I didn't realize that we were that good and calling all those shots. So that was awesome. But one of the things we loved about Ozigbo was the power. We said, man, this guy's a Mack truck. He's going to run through people. Dude got popped couple times in this game, and it made me realize, yep, he's in the NFL now. And he didn't.
Maybe he was wearing like those big pads at Nebraska or something, like the old school Rydell pads, because he does look a lot smaller.
I know, right? Yeah, I don't know. It's something about it. I don't know. Big Ten not translating, but he got popped a couple times, and he didn't necessarily totally bounce off, but he didn't plow through anybody either. Like there was one run inside the 10 there that I thought, okay, he's got a full head of steam, and he's got one guy in front of him. I thought he's going to barrel over him, get into the end zone, and he just got knocked straight down. But I love what I'm seeing out the backfield, and that really could be the X factor that separates him. But again, I think we're downplaying. Dwayne Washington ain't a slacker either when he's carrying the ball. I mean, he's running hard. It wasn't exactly the gash fest that we were hearing about in practice, but they broke off some good runs on the Chargers D, so that was good to see. But let me tell you something that I didn't like in my film study. Y'all know I love to break down the trenches in preseason. Andrews Pete missing assignments in the run game. I mean, looked like the rookie Andrews Pete on a couple plays. Like the play that Murray gets blown up in the backfield, Andrews Pete is just lost. He picks the wrong linebacker to go after, and he lets the middle linebacker just come right up and make the play. he also just looked like old lead cleats Andrews Pete. So I don't know if he's just kind of going half-ass in preseason or what, but he just didn't have it. And then Nick Easton, I hope this dude is taking a cut of that big salary that he's got and paying a freaking pension to Chris Clark for ending his career, man. Poor dude gets signed this week. Local guy, feel good story from the beats. George, Easton totally whiffs. You saw this, right? I mean, we were talking about totally whiffs, sack on Hill, and even worse, Clark on the IR. I mean, ain't that some shit? Does Easton owe him or what?
Yeah, that was brutal. Chris Clark, McDonough 35, local hero. He turned other teams down just to come back to the Saints on his very first play. He gets IR. That was official today. Yeah, Easton needs to step up. But, Ron, I'm not worried about Andrews Pete one iota. And that's funny for me to say that because, guys, you're gonna be like, George, you're a hypocrite. But like I was the same. How I talk about Davenport today was how I was entering year 2 for Pete, and he's gone full circle. A great arc, like a Game of Thrones character. And I'm not worried about Andrews Pete. I'd love to make fun of him like the good old days, but no, man, he's all reliable. No concern there. And guys, and again, going back to Davenport, I want to reiterate, I am rooting for him. This is just. I'm calling a spade here, and I'm just not seeing the on the field, but we need to see for him to have that great leap that you named the other great DNs, the great Hall of Famers. They had that leap from year 1 to their sophomore season, and I'm sure that preseason, that training camp, there are all these evidence to show that was going to occur, and yet there's no evidence whatsoever for me to really feel confident in Davenport. And you know what was funny about this episode? We hardly ever agree. And it was the one time we debated. We really debated, and it was fun.
Yeah, no, it was good. It was good. So, all right, I do have one other phone question to discuss. This is coming from our boy CJ. Good Jesuit Blue Jay here. So, Jay, pay attention to this one here because I know you're probably too busy showing a house or something. So, at the end of the game, Colton Jumper, Tennessee, got the interception. He's running it back. Jay, you already alluded to your boy Josh Martin leading the charge to the end zone, right? This dude, one of our runs is yelling at the TV for him to go down. He's thinking, hey, it may just be preseason, but you got to instill this kind of stuff in him now. It's smarter to go down, keep possession, get the score. The TD puts you up 8. What if you miss the PAT? Then it's just a one-score game. You're giving the ball back. I mean, are any of these thoughts going through your mind while this play is happening? Or are you just, hey, good for this guy, have your moment?
Yeah, Chris, you have a great football IQ, great point. But it's the preseason, and this guy has a lot better shot of making the team if he dodges a few people, he shows he can really run and open it up in the open field and score a touchdown rather than taking a knee at the goal line and showing a high football IQ. I think he's got a better shot of making the team by displaying his athletic ability. So, Jumper, you do you. It's not week 14 trying to clinch a playoff berth where famously, I forget who it was, Brian Westbrook against the Cowboys, takes a knee, Eagles milk out the clock. Go ahead and score the touchdown, brother. Have your moment.
Yeah, this is not J.R. Smith not knowing the game's tied and then goes to run out the clock. Have some fun. And Ron, one more thing, we do have another fan question from a Ron of the week, Alex Griffith. I'm going to point this question to you. He asks, what is Boogie's blood pressure right now thus far due to Marcus Davenport's lack of production in the preseason?
Well, all right. We've checked in on this just recently, actually, and gotten the report that Boogie is hardly fired up by comparison's sake. He's still recovering from the Nola no call. He's just not feeling the juices. I'm not gonna get corrected and say he's got low blood pressure, but I'm still saying he's probably only about 105, 110 over maybe 70, 75 right now. He's the needle's not even moving for him until week 1 hits, but I think it's going to hit like a ton of bricks Monday night under the overpass. He's going to have that LaCroix cracked open in his hand, and you're just going to see it just overflowing with fizz because he's just going to be shaking. His nerves are going to be just through the roof. People talk about ice in the veins. His veins are going to be boiling over. All right.
Stat Ron, check on that blood pressure, please.
Yeah, I already checked. That's pretty good blood pressure. That's pretty normal. So
yeah. I mean,
And
Dr. Ron is in the building.
Hey, safety first with Ron. He keeps us all safe. Hey guys, I really enjoyed this episode. We got more heated and animated than ever before. But in Ron, in this episode of crazy emotions and this rock and roll roller coaster hour, what did we get wrong?
Honestly, so Jay, with the majority of the corrections here, earlier Jay referred to Hakeem Butler. I think you were referring to Emmanuel Butler, not Hakeem. And then also mentioned StubHub Field. That name of the stadium is now actually Dignity Health Sports Park, not StubHub Field. And then you had mentioned the USC linebacker. The name is Porter Gustin that you were referring to. Oh, one other thing too. I pulled 40 times for Vic, Taysom Hill, and Aaron Brooks.
Hell yeah.
Vic ran a 4.33 at the combine. Taysom Hill ran a 4.48, and then Aaron Brooks with the 4.59.
Damn.
Told you, Ron.
But I also want to throw one other thing out here, and we talked about Jorge actually eating a crow, and Jay talking about Deontay Harris to the Pro Bowl. Should we put an actual wager on the line here, and with Jay either taking Deontay Harris makes the Pro Bowl, or if Davenport gets 8 sacks, one of them has to do something of either the fans or our choosing?
I kind of think it needs to be Pro Bowl for Pro Bowl. What do y'all think?
No, y'all think of something more realistic, and I'm about it. But stat Ron, what I want to avoid is a situation where I'm rooting against Davenport. I'm going to be rooting for Davenport. I want to reiterate that, and I just don't see it. I'm just calling a spade here. I'm not trying to be ugly. I know I got really passionate there. I started seeing red. Maybe I went too far. Maybe I did. But look, I'm just nervous that this guy. It's 2 first-round picks. It's so important. We can't understate how grave this is.
Sorry to bring up the.
It's okay. I'll be able to sleep tonight, hopefully. But Porter Gustin, I think he's going to beat out Vince Beagle as your last D-end outside linebacker. Vince Beagle's going through an injury.
Beagle's kind of a dog, though.
Yeah, he's good. It's a great canine pun. Porter Gustin's looking great. But we have more in this episode. We've gone over everything. Anything we're looking for in particular here on the Week 3 preseason game, which tends to be your dress rehearsal, your best foot forward going into the regular season?
Yeah, I want a better full showing from the full team. There's nothing from the first 2 weeks. I know, man, what a difference number 9 makes, right? If he's not out there, I mean, we can talk about Taysom Hill and Bridgewater all we want, but gosh, it looks a whole lot different. Arm strength, no arm strength when he's out there, just his command. But I want something to jump off of that makes you believe this team's going to win a Super Bowl, and it doesn't all have to do with number 9. Other people need to do their part. The first 2 weeks, this team hasn't really given me anything to be overly encouraged about. Yeah, there's plays here and there, the Von Bell play, Onyemata playing well, et cetera, et cetera. But I want to see a great team effort. I'm not looking at any particular position, but something to be very encouraged about going into the season.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we really haven't had a good crisp feeling. This past week didn't really feel it with the one offense. So I would break it down and say I'd like to see the first team unit offensive line. I'd like to see them play as a team, to what Jay's point is. And then the secondary. I'd like to see them performing as a team. You saw some breakdowns this past weekend. We didn't really talk about the play that PJ gets beat on that touchdown where Banjo comes up, shows zero coverage, and then he bails right at the snap, and then Patton just runs right by him and PJ. So I'd like to see the secondary act as that team and be a little more cohesive and just see some guys make some plays on the ball from the corners. Yeah, we're seeing a few plays from the safeties, but heck, Hardy's the only one making plays on the ball right now. So, Stat Ron, what do you want to see this week?
Like I had mentioned earlier, I think Divine Ezigbo has got the biggest target on his back right now for this roster spot in the third running back position. So he's going to get a lot of action especially this week and the next in week 4. And so who's going to show up? Divine Ezigbo, Dwayne Washington's pretty sure he's got a spot, but obviously he's fighting for it. And also just other guys that are fighting for position battles. I think this is when it starts to get heated once camp shuts down, as it will be tomorrow, and it actually just gets into really just the grinding for those playing time in the games. I don't know. It's just looking forward to a lot of guys trying to fight for roster spots.
Ron, if you're curious, I had Butler, Ozigbo, and Alize Mack for your offense.
No, that's a good point. I mean, I was hoping you were going to touch the wide receivers because somebody's got to build that chemistry with Bridgewater this week. It has to happen. So I'll be looking forward to seeing that. All right, Rons, we talk every week. This podcast going up and up and up. It's trending. We got stickers coming out for the fall. We got T-shirts in the works. Well, we just reached another milestone here. We have our first official sponsor. Jay's reeling them in for us, and we think you're really going to enjoy it. It's going to be relevant for you every week, and it's going to give you the knowledge that you need going on outside the league, but in your own fantasy leagues. Let's take it away. French Quarter Realty.
All right, guys, this is Jansen here. You've known me as a lot of names. Jay, the New Yorker, but here to tell you it is Jansen Patagna. Recently moved back from New York, hence the name New Yorker, was working at West Point in football. Came back in February and in July began with a new career change, a new path, working for French Quarter Realty. It's been amazing. Got to know parts of the city that I never knew existed. Great reconnecting with a lot of old friends. I know a bunch of people are listening that I've run into. So French Quarter Realty, if you haven't heard of it, look it up. If you need any help finding a house, hit me up. Cell phone number is 504-621-9443. But anyway, I'm talking about this because I introduced the podcast to some of my coworkers, and they really enjoyed it. And some of the higher-ups, the brokers at the company said, let's get involved. We want to support you. We want to get our name out there. What a great avenue to do that. So today on the podcast, we have 2 of our 4 brokers. They know about as much about fantasy football as they do the ongoings of real estate in this city. And that's saying a lot. So what we'll do throughout the course of the season is we're going to be bam, 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 60 seconds of all you need to know fantasy news. And you can take this all the way to the bank. These guys have the best advice. So we got George Johnson and Eric Wilkinson right here on the line. And today they're just going to go over some draft strategy heading into your draft this weekend. So George, what you got as far as draft strategy goes?
Thanks, Jansen. I would say going into your draft this weekend for the first round, I would just keep it simple and play it safe. The beginning of the first round, you should probably be targeting a running back, and the end of the first round, target a high-end wide receiver. Other than Patrick Mahomes, I would start looking at quarterbacks in the 4th, 5th, and 6th round. It's a deep field, and you can still get tremendous value later in the draft.
All right, Jansen, going on with what George was talking about, managing risk is the number one priority in the draft. High-risk players like Todd Gurley, Zeke Elliott, Melvin Gordon, A.J. Green, they can definitely lose you a fantasy season and probably not going to be able to win it on their own. Avoid stacking players. Don't go after groups of players like Kelsey, Mahomes, Tyreek Hill, Damian Williams, where one injury can derail your whole season. Look for those high-floor players, high-upside players, and go get the guys you like.
Who dat? That's our Fantasy Minute with French Quarter Realty. Remember, nobody knows this city like we do. Make sure to look us up. Y'all take care.
All right, Saints fans, who dat? Pro Saints Talk. We out here, babe.
Love y'all.
Early in the morning, let's go get 'em. Late in the evening, let's go get 'em. Got blood if I'm grieving, let's go get 'em. Tambourine ringing, let's go get 'em. How could I hear ya? Let's go get 'em. I can't get near you now. Let's go get 'em. Oh, will crumble. Let's go get 'em. Oh, will crumble. Let's go get 'em. Chief on limbo now. Let's go get 'em. Chief on limbo now. Let's go get 'em.
This message is designated for the one and only Rons. Hey Rons, this is Austin Carr of the New Orleans Saints, wide receiver number 80. I heard everything y'all said, and once again, my man George was correct on all accounts regarding the Saints. Okay? Just keep that in mind, all right? He was correct. He's also correct about life. I think he's got great advice. Listen, take care. Who dat, Rons? Who dat?
This podcast dream would only be a dream if not for Andrew Simmons behind the ones and twos doing the hard part. So a big shout out to our sound engineer, Andrew Simmons.